think it's still morning, isn't it? Yep, good morning, everyone. Yes, clearly that's not me. But David is away having a baby at the moment, so we wish him well with that. But, my name is Mike Awford. I am the channel director for Sonicwall, which means I have responsibility for all of the partners in the ecosystem. So I'm not much more technical than David, in truth, but I have been there longer. So I probably know a little bit more about the Sonicwall side of things. So firstly, can I just ask, is any Sonicwall customers? Okay, great. I mean, we've been partners with K3 for a long time, so I would be a little disappointed if no hands went up there. But I mean, that's a relationship that goes back probably 10 years. So I'd be very happy to chat to any customers outside. We're the stand with absolutely no signage whatsoever. There is a blank table with me and Ryan stood behind it. So come and have a chat to us after this if you want to know any more about any of this. So I think the first thing to know about Sonicwall is we've been going 27 years. We've been doing this for 27 years. So we are primarily a firewall vendor that serves the small to medium business market. So that's a long time in this industry. You know, we have been through various iterations of ownership. Up to a couple of years ago, we were owned by Dell for 4 or 5 years, and now we're back in the hands of private equity. So, but the sort of journey goes on, and obviously it all evolves. But what 27 years of experience gives us is a huge data set to reference of this sort of stuff. So when you service the small business, you're not necessarily the biggest firewall vendors in the world. So your Checkpoints and your Palo Altos are the larger by revenue. But we sell 3 million odd firewalls that are dotted all around the globe. That's around 200 countries. And we harvest a lot of the information that they give us. So that goes back into our own threat intelligence labs. And we publish out in the last few years, you may well have seen something we call the threat report. And the threat report is what's happened in the last year. You know, as Scott referred to, we view it exactly in the same way as you heard Mimecast talk about. It is an arms race. So it's an arms race for people who block the nasty stuff and the people who create the nasty stuff. And that is, you know, there's some wins and gives and gets each year, the industry scores and the perpetrators of cybercrime score. So it's interesting. So we publish something every half year. We'd be really happy to share that with you. If you come and give us a card, we'll send you a copy of it. So some of this data is very, very recent, but I think lots of vendors will stand up here and talk about threats. I think you understand the seriousness of the situation. Otherwise, you wouldn't have things like GDPR coming into play as well. But this is just what we're seeing. So remember, from huge data set, and we refine this each year. So 2016, 2017, you know, an increase in malware, not terribly surprising. What was interesting in the first half of this year, though, is that we're set to surpass the 9 million by quite some margin. So takeaway from this is, yes, malware is on the increase. There is just so much of it these days being created. One of the other things we're trying to do is make this sort of data more relevant to you, because I've been in this industry for nearly 20 years. And a lot of security is being sold on risk, fear, compliance, security as enabler. For those of you who've been around a little longer, back in 2000s when e-commerce was all the rage, and you know, this sort of data it's a bit out there. You know, if you're a small business in the UK, you know, an attack on Target, one of the biggest retailers in the US, you know, it's interesting. Attack on BA, you know, it's interesting, particularly if you're one of their customers, like I was. You know, it's interesting, but doesn't feel that real, you know, if you're a small to medium business in the UK. Well, you know, we're trying to distill this information down to, you know, what an average Sonicwall customer would experience. So this data I'll share with you is what and remember, an average Sonicwall customer is a small to medium business, you know, circa 25 to 50 to 100 users, out there. So that data translates, through June to 79 malware attacks a day. Okay, that starts to feel a bit more real, hitting the perimeter of your network and whatever is protecting you from the outside world. Ransomware. Interesting enough, last year, actually, our post-WannaCry, so we actually saw a bit of a decline in ransomware in our own experience, because actually a lot of people started spending a bit more money on security, updated some outdated security systems, fixes came along, WannaCry was in most people's fixes. So the actual strains of ransomware were pretty much handled by engineers. They started getting a bit of a handle on how to deal with it. What we saw last year, though, was lots and lots of new variants. So WannaCry, Petya, non-Petya, all these types of things. They're CryptoLocker. These things are quite well known. There's new strains coming through now. So that's driving the increase back up again. So, if you were anyone go through Bristol Airport a couple of weeks ago, there's a ransomware attack on Bristol Airport. They took down all of the flight screens, and they were having to manage all the flights on a whiteboard. Imagine that. So, this stuff is super real. I say this, everybody's got a ransomware story. In this industry, everyone pretty much got a ransomware story of some scale or size or impact. So, lots of that around too. The other challenge, I suppose, which is kind of good and bad, is a lot of the internet now is encrypted. So standard search engines are now HTTPS. All social media is HTTPS. If you don't recognize the signs, it's the little padlock at the top. Okay, which means your channel is encrypted. The challenge with that is we're seeing an increasing amount of malware now put in encrypted streams because you typically might not inspect that. In fact, a lot of people don't because it's got some challenges attached to that. But a lot of firewalls, modern firewalls, will do something called deep packet inspection. We've been doing it a long time. We're not the only ones who do it. They'll actually unpick the package, have a look inside the payload, and see if it's malware inside. That's fine. But imagine doing that when it's already encrypted. And you're talking about nearly 2/3. So that's one challenge I'd like you to take away from today. Is if your gateway doesn't support that, that goes straight through your firewall. The good news is a relatively small amount of malware is housed there, but it's growing. It's growing quick. Mimecast touched on this. Phishing is the main vector for ransomware as well, and that's pretty well known. Clicking on an erroneous link, and some of them are so good, so seriously well sophisticated. I didn't know that actually about using a different character in the alphabet. So that's the challenges, and this is the challenge we all face when we're trying to defend ourselves from this stuff. But there's an awful lot of phishing around, which needs to be caught through email security. So our challenge that our customers face, and this is our charter to you out there, is we got traditional malware threats. We've got ransomware. It's more pervasive than ever. We've got attacks on things like memory now. So if you've heard of things like Spectre and Meltdown, these are attacks which affect pretty much all processors. And it's a new threat vector that we're having to deal with today, and we'll kind of come back to that in a little while. Encrypted malware I've mentioned. Cryptojacking is a bit like sort of botnets where your computer will be taken over and the computing power will be used to go and mine cryptocurrencies. Advertising, so advertising sites which look like legitimate websites that people will go to, and phishing. So these are the sorts of challenges we've got to face through all the different mediums and the way we do business today as well. So browsers, apps, files, wired, wireless, mobile devices across all that estate. So it's complicated, it's a challenge. So there's some critical components we think you need, and this is the way we will approach modern breach prevention today. And I'll come back to how we do that in a second. So, as I say, Sonicwall is best known for next generation firewalls. We also do a whole range of different things. You know, lots of vendors are talking to you today about platforms. And that's because there's direct correlation between, you know, a firewall and an endpoint, for instance, a firewall and an access point. You know, there is direct correlation. So what we aim to do is have all of these sort of different security devices and technologies. You may not take them all from us. You may obviously choose and pick and choose, but this is pretty much what the ecosystem looks like. But manageability becomes an issue, which is why all the vendors are going down a platform approach, because it's not just about here's our product, good luck with that. It's how do we manage it? How do we respond to breaches? What sort of visibility do we get of actually what's happened? How can we understand more about something that has happened or could happen? So these sort of platforms. And the cloud is a really, really logical place to put that type of interface, because you just really want to use it and consume it. You don't necessarily want to manage it. It's just another piece of tin, another piece of hardware you've got to patch and update and resolve all that stuff. Cloud is perfect for management. So a lot of the cloud providers, so a lot of the security vendors will look to cloud. We're no different from that perspective. One of the things you might find interesting, if you come and see us afterwards, we can show you a little demo of this, is giving you a greater visibility of what's happening, not just worldwide. That's great. We can certainly show you that. But in Europe, by country, if you're interested in which countries are under most attacks currently, by what type of malware, or we can show you that too. And our idea is to bring this right to your network perimeter so that you can see exactly what's happening in your environment, so it's relevant to you. And we'll do that via something called threat meters, and it looks something like this, part of our cloud platform. This for you Sonicwall customers who've been perhaps used GMS or my Sonicwall, this you might have noticed this has changed. This looks very different now. So my Sonicwall licensing will all be done through this interface. This is part of the cloud platform I just showed you. I'd also signpost you to some other stuff which is interesting. So who's familiar with the term shadow IT? Okay. So shadow IT is it's a challenge in modern business today because there are so many cloud apps around. So an example would be a new HR director. They're having to use such and such an HR platform, but actually they came from somewhere else and used, I don't know, we use Bamboo, right? So something like Bamboo. And they go, actually, I'm going to use that because I'm more used to that. I can pay for the license and expense it. It's fine. So I'll use that. Well, that's not a legitimate business application, but it's running in your environment, okay? Because you can't control some of this stuff. So you've got your controlled applications that you're allowed to use, but cloud is a free-for-all. One of the challenges if you manage this stuff is what are our customers actually using? What cloud apps are we being consumed? Dropbox might be the corporate standard, but Box or OneDrive or something else is actually being used. So one of the features of this interface is you'll be able to see that. So it will show you every cloud app that's running. We'll rank it for security because some of them are more secure than others. And if you want to block it, you just block it there and then. Okay? That's the CAS element of that. That's what the threat meters looks like. Remember war games. It's interesting, but as I say, it's more interesting when it's right outside our front door. So we sell physical appliances. That's where traditional security's been done. We sell them virtually now as well. There's lots of different ways to consume the technology, but the mechanics, the bones, this is actually what's happening in turn. I'm going to just walk you through this because this brings back all the elements we've spoken about in the past, a couple of minutes ago. So it starts with a file coming in, and we'll take a sample of that file. Now, a lot of people are talking about machine learning, artificial intelligence, how it's used in security. It's a really important thing because if you consider that amount of malware that's being created, traditional AV falls down. Okay, so traditional AV will stop you at the gateway. Will stop an awful lot of stuff, which is great, just right there. But there's also so much stuff coming through that it hasn't seen before as well. And you have to write a signature for all that stuff. It's a hash, so it's fine. Yeah, piece of malware, I've seen that. So I reference it against my database, it doesn't get through. So we take artifacts. Now, the thing about machine learning which is important is if you imagine, we've been doing machine learning since nearly 11, 12 years now. And if I took any one of you and sat you in a darkened room and showed you a picture of a car, and every type of car, thousands of times a day, you're going to get to know what a car looks like. And you'll be able to tell the difference between a car and a tractor. Now, but they share some of the same attributes. So it's got 4 wheels, certain size, it's got wing mirrors. These are attributes, okay, which could be shared between all sorts of devices, but all cars are not equal. Malware looks the same. It has very common attributes, okay? So we can throw away a lot of stuff that we just know because we've been doing 12 years worth of hundreds of thousands of samples of malware. You see it again and again and again. You learn to know what it looks like. And we can throw it away right there. So that's blocked right at the gateway. So that goes ultimately classified, whether it's ransomware, malware, whatever, just blocked this piece over here. Didn't want to walk on here, and of course I'm going to fall off it. But here, these bits here. So it just comes through. We look at it and pass it through there. Now, the unknown stuff, and this is one of the challenges we've got. There is just so much unknown stuff. And that goes through something called sandbox. Now, the sandbox is the piece to the right with the A, B, C, D. So if we've never seen it before, we're gonna put it through a kind of car wash, and the car wash is in the cloud, so there's no hit on the device itself. But malware is very clever because some of it will know it's in a sandbox. So it will not reveal itself because a lot of sandboxes are actually in virtual machines. Okay, so it can detect certain attributes of its environment. Some of them won't actually reveal themselves until 60 days later. Okay, so you have to be able to fast forward time. And some of them, you just want to know what it does, so you literally have to open it in a controlled environment. Okay, so that's what it does through there. Now, memory is a new threat vector there. So one of the challenges the chip processors do is chips are always trying to go quicker. The faster the processor, the faster the processor. And one of the changes they made a few years ago was they made kind of these predictive streams. So they go, right, okay, an instruction comes through, and I can go one of 3 ways. So I'm going to hedge my bets, and I'm going to kick that off. But it means you're having to cache certain things in that file as it comes through. So you're taking certain bits of information. So Spectre and Meltdown and Foreshadow, which is the latest strain, these are all malware that's aimed at memory chips, every single memory chip. Now, you can't patch hardware, okay? But you can apply a patch. There are some performance challenges, but you can't rip out every processor that's out there. Now, again, it's a relatively small strain, but it's going a lot of the zero-day stuff we find is aimed at memory. But that's just a battleground, and that whole thing moves all the time. So we have an engine for that, specifically for that in our sandbox, where we will take it, we know what it is, and it'll reveal itself. So this is where we're gleaning all this information from. So we call that the Capture Threat Labs. Everything we do is called Capture now. Absolutely everything. It's getting quite confusing, but there's lots of devices. This is interesting for you to know because everybody who catches a cold or catches a piece of plant, ultimately you end up protected. It all goes back in, feeds the machine, feeds the subscription. If you have a live subscription, everybody gets updated. Now, there's always a patient zero, unfortunately, but ultimately you will get protection very, very rapidly. So what does that mean, again, to a customer? So if that's a business, so if you're a business, you can know there are people who's out to get your data. That's just a fact. Okay? And if you had nothing there at all, that's the sort of life you'd be experiencing every day. But you don't, because you already have certain layers of security in place. So you'll have email, for instance. And you're going to stop, in our instance, you'd stop a couple of thousand attacks right there with a good email security solution. Mimecast is very, very good as well. So we have lots of customers and partners who sell that solution. So to be fair, we also have one. It's vital. Your firewall, remember what I was saying about gateway antivirus? That's going to stop a whole load of stuff right there, just because it's seen lots of stuff. So a lot of it gets cleaned up right at the gateway. The other parts, so remember this is kind of the layered approach, this is good practice security, these are just features that really you need to look to enable. So we should be inspecting encrypted traffic as well, otherwise it's going straight through your firewall. Do that, we can stop another 623 encrypted threats through since January. So again, remember, this business could very much look like yours, I promise you. Sandbox stops around 739 threats a day, just to give you an idea of how much zero-day stuff that's unknown, not been seen before, there's no signatures for it, comes through. And as I mentioned before, loads of zero-day stuff aimed at memory as well. So we're seeing lots of that. If you haven't got any of that, or if you're on the move, you're a hotel or whatever, then all of these kind of layers you don't have, you're very much at the mercy of the environment you're in. We also have a client device, which if you do get into difficulty, you can just roll back from a previous state. And you can do that without having to contact administration. So wrapping up, 26 years experience, about 1 million networks protected, 3 million firewalls. We've been doing this a long time, and longevity and security is a really, really important thing because it enables you to do some of the stuff which is malware detection really efficiently and really well and very, very quickly and very effectively. That is often gets lost. That is ultimately the reason we are here, is to stop the nasty stuff getting onto your network. And we've been doing that an awful long time. So you'd know us for network security. We have endpoint now. It's all managed through the same interface. We've got virtual firewalls too, web application firewalls if you've got any traffic facing the internet. We have email security, and it's all managed through the same platform. So that is our goal. Our goal really ultimately is to help. I can stand up here and our aim is not to instill the fear of God into you because, business is a challenging enough environment anyway. Our role in life is to help you, fear less about this stuff so you can concentrate on your business and you've got it covered. Yeah, no, it's a good question. I mean, and that's really why IoT is that is kind of a bit like the Wild West at the moment, to be honest. And sadly, security is a bit of an afterthought after the event. I mean, I don't know. Problem with being in the industry 20 years is I'll never, ever put an Alexa or a Google in my house because I have an awful idea of how that's going to go. But, I mean, we're just starting off on our IoT journey. We will have a small device for IoT that will come out, which will be a shield, essentially, for whatever that device is ultimately on site. We do some of that stuff already, but there's a certain price point of expectation. IoT's consumer device. You're not going to buy, you're not going to spend £1,000 on a firewall for something that costs you 59 quid. So there's an economic argument. Our idea is to take the security of that right down to a point where the protection and the cost make commercial sense, and it becomes something that IoT does. But I'm really happy to chat to you about that. Yeah, good question. It's 2 milliseconds on average. So it's because a lot of stuff is so tiny, in actual fact. Stuff can take longer if it comes through. There are file size restrictions as well, which just you don't ever want to have them there, but otherwise, users will just be waiting hours for files. But it really doesn't take long. The cloud is, the challenge if you're a hardware vendor is literally the more of these services you turn on. I'm sure that's why you're asking the question. The more of these services you turn on, it degrades the performance of the firewall, and so sizing that device is vital. That you do that right. You understand what features you want to consume. For sandboxing, cloud's a perfect place to do it because it's always there. It doesn't take any hit on the device. You can build a super resilient, data center behind it, so it's always available. and it just makes sense to do it there. And it's such a really small percentage of the overall traffic, plus the traffic itself are very small, so it gets done super quick. We record. I know that. I'm not just going 2 milliseconds because it sounds great. We record it because it's a commonly asked question, and we monitor it through our data centers as well. But sometimes it does take longer, and if you're waiting, you will get a splash screen which says that file's been inspected. Please bear with us. So. If you're sat at your corporate office, you are responsible for the security that's put there. So it's your firewall, whether you manage it or not. It's your email solution. You've laid out that infrastructure. You've put your defense in depth there. When you get up and take your laptop and go and sit in Starbucks, and you're connecting directly to the internet, you're not connecting back through your own infrastructure. I mean, you can do, but most people just hop onto the access point that's there and off you go. So you're using their security at that moment in time. And that's the thing. It's just if you're in your office, you've got the layers. You can feel somewhat more secure than being out there in a hotel or wherever. But you don't know what they've got in place. So it's a fact of life, isn't it? I mean, I spend an awful lot of time in that environment, not Starbucks, but sometimes. But out and about, not in my office. I don't spend a lot of time in my office where I know I've got all these shields. So, it's good to be able to have. That's where your client software kind of is really important as a last line. It's a bit like if I don't know if you follow football. It's a bit like they've breached your defence and literally they're through on goal and you're just relying on the goalie. That's your last line of defence.